Hi folks and welcome to your Gersnet. Welcome to Ibrox Philippe Clement Podcast, coming to you in association with Forest Precision Engineering. My name's Alec Anderson. I want to apologise for the hood, just a bit embarrassed. You remember when Gaza arrived, we all ran out, we got the Gaza hairdo, the peroxide blonde do in tribute to our newly arrived hero. Well, I'm a bit old for that carry on, but I couldn't help myself. I went out and I got the full Philippe Clement, the 19th full-time manager of Rangers, appointed 2 weeks after the sacking of Michael Beale, is Belgian. We've gone with the Be in Benelux. We've gone with Eddie Merckx in the yellow jersey. We've gone with the Moulay Frites, the bottle of Duvel. We've gone with Jean-Claude Van Damme roundhousing the Uzi submachine gun out of the bad guy's hand. We've gone with Hercule Poirot twiddling his wee tash and adjusting his monocle. We've gone with René Magritte, the treachery of images. Ceci n'est pas une pipe. I said peep. We don't ask the kind of questions anymore. We're about everyone, anyone. We have gone with Jacques Brel singing Dans les ports Amsterdam, Dans les ports Amsterdam, in a way that David Bowie never could. We've gone with Jean Dielman, 23 Quai du Commerce, 1080 Bruxelles, recently voted the greatest film of all time by Sight and Sound, and it isn't, but it's really good. It's well worth a watch, and we're hoping that Philippe Clement is going to be well worth a watch. He's going to serve up football well worth a watch. I'm less concerned about that than a lot of other Rangers fans are just now. I just want winning football. The most beautiful thing for me in all of sport is consistent winning, and it's certainly the most beautiful thing you can see at Rangers, and that's what the man has been charged with doing. I think it's a decent appointment, and I think the Rangers board have conducted themselves pretty sharply. It looks quite impressive, I think, from this distance. If it doesn't work out, and it's always a gamble when you appoint a new manager, particularly if you're in Rangers' kind of place in the European market, if you like, when it comes to appointing managers, it's always a risk attached with it. But if it all falls through and it's a disaster, well, there'll be hell to pay for them, because I think we've got a lot of talk about tactics and what have you at Ibrox. I mean, Belgium also, of course, the land of Stella Artois, the old Wreck the House juice. And the house hasn't been wrecked so much as during this international break they've needed to crack the windows open and get it properly aired, because there's been a whole lot of merd plopping on the pitch under the management of Michael Beale, especially this season. I think the board themselves, you've got a chairman who wasn't the chairman when Michael Beale was appointed. You've got a CEO who wasn't the CEO when Michael Beale was appointed. The director of football left in between times, Ross Wilson. And I know there's all this talk of this is our fourth manager in the space of 2 years. I think we should remember that the reason Steven Gerrard left us was because he was so good that Aston Villa had to have him, and they're operating in a financial context that we just can't match, and they came and took him away because he'd been so successful. And I think the lack of a director of football has really upset a lot of Rangers fans, myself included. It's concerned me, although we have to remember again, it's as soon as it doesn't work on the park, everything you did was bad. But I think a lot of Rangers fans were quite content up until the start of this season that Michael Beale was very much copying the Ange Postecoglou model of being a de facto director of football, just going out there and getting the kind of players that he'd earmarked, even going and talking to these players and targeting them in person. And I think that suited the kind of atavistic thinking that I'm certainly subscribing to as an older football fan, that, well, if the manager just go and get his players, we don't want a director of football getting in the way. But I think what we're seeing here with Graham Souness being invited, I didn't realise this is only something that I heard about probably today, that Graham Souness had been involved in the process, these interviews that were going on in London. So the board have kind of covered themselves, and the fact that they've been clever enough to cover themselves with having almost a kind of temporary director of football, but also they're all kind of coming together to provide a general director of football vibe without us actually having one. Even Craig Robertson, his role to me, when I see it written down on paper, looks very much like director of football, but apparently he's more kind of admin sort of thing. But he's been brought in. He was the man that was on the phone to Stephen Davis. Stephen Davis confirmed this to ask him if he wanted to be interim manager of Rangers, and the other person that was on the phone to Steve Davis. Steve Davis confirmed 2 weeks ago tonight was our one and only CEO, Mr. James Bisgrove, who I pretty much despise. James Bisgrove is the kind of person who, if I met him in real life, I loathe. I go against every fibre, every moral fibre of my being. He talks in permanent kind of blue sky thinking, or this. It's unbearable. He's completely venal. He just wants to make as much money as possible. He wants to advance his own career, and that is absolutely fine by me, because we're up against Peter Lawwell's Celtic. That's what we've got to compete with. He's a completely venal, despicable character, Peter Lawwell, as far as I'm concerned, the way he's run Celtic. So if we want to get ourselves in an even keel with them finally, financially and infrastructurally, and just being ready to go, in fact we want to overtake them, then I'm quite happy to have James Bisgrove in the way that you would maybe need to get a hard man on the pitch, get a player who's capable of being pretty dirty to sort out opposition hard men. So it's something that's got to be done as far as I'm concerned. And Bisgrove has moved quite quickly, advancing his job to being CEO, and I think they've covered themselves really well. He's obviously going to that'll be a part of his kind of plan, was to get Souness, and Graham Souness, who, by the way, set up the goal, had the assist for the only goal of the biggest match in the history of Club Brugge, a club that means so much to Philippe Clement, where he made his name as a player and a manager. The 1978 European Cup final, the only time Club Brugge played in the European Cup final. I was just going strong. No, Graham, you were playing the most beautiful ball of the century through to Kendaglish for the only goal of that game. So Clement would definitely have known about him in a kind of personal level, if not just in the fact that Graham Souness is one of the greatest players of all time. It was a masterful move, because I think what I'm hoping for here is that we are going to go through this process again, is that we are going to have this managerial roundabout merry-go-round, because we're going to have to lose managers because they're being so successful. We talk about a player trading model, where ultimately every Rangers fan, knowing our position in Scottish football's position in the global market, wants us to be able to get players who we're then going to have to sell because they're so good, and we can't hope to compete in the player market with the top 5 leagues, for example. And with England right on our doorstep, I hope Philippe Clement, 49 years old, still a lot to prove after being sacked by Monaco, has still got something to prove, and he wants to do it in England. His English is great. I've only seen a snippet. I don't subscribe to Rangers TV, but I've seen a little snippet of the interview. The English is absolutely smashing, and I think he'll be coming here to Britain. It's a big British club, hoping to eventually do so well that he's going to go down south, because it really is a managerial merry-go-round down in the English Premier League. And yeah, I'm quite happy with that. What we've got to do is get an actual director of football in there, and set up this context, even set up the infrastructure round about the manager, where we're quite happy almost to lose a manager every 18 months to 2 years, you would think, if it's going to be successful, because Philippe Clement is only going to go to England, particularly the Premier League, if he is winning trebles and at least a couple of league titles at Rangers and doing well, really consolidating in Europe. So I think that would absolutely suit us, and Rangers have just got to get to the situation where it's all set up round about us at boardroom level, that we can process those managers in much the same way that we would want to be processing, good quality players that we move on to a bigger market. And I think the board have cobbled together something in this time to affect that, to create that effect overall. They've let it be known, they've leaked it out through Chris Jack of the Rangers Review. As far as I'm concerned, that's the only kind of news source that I really go for. They've let it be known that they're going to take their time doing it, and then they let it be known that it was Muscat and Clement that it was down to. It was down to those two candidates. Now, if either of them, if it turned out we'd got a third candidate had come in today, like Derek McInnes or some other foreign manager or whatever, it would have looked bad. They said they were going to take the whole week to decide, the whole of last week to decide, conclude the interview process, and then they've let it go into the weekend, taken off Saturday as well to make sure it's all sorted out. Muscat didn't get the gig, Clement did, and I'm very happy with that. Nothing against Kevin Muscat. I'm just very happy with the way the whole process has gone, but get somebody in there now so that when we have to go through this again, hopefully because the manager is so good, it'll be a lot smoother and we've all got a lot more faith in it. And that'll only happen if we're winning on the park, and if we're losing managers because bigger clubs are coming in for us, like richer clubs. There's no many bigger clubs than Rangers. Richer clubs are coming in for them. Then that's absolutely fine by me. That's got to be the manager trading model that we are now working towards. Philippe Clement, my God, what a career. If you think, don't compare him to Kevin Muscat, who's a cracking career as well, and doing pretty well over in Japan. I would compare it more to Michael Beale, who's come in. Maybe that's a poor comparison, maybe that's not saying anything, but if you look at, we brought in a manager who'd had, 6 months as a manager in his own right, and 4 of those months were really bad at QPR. I think all in all, you've got Clement here, who, and Beale wasn't a player. He had to give up his playing career without having done anything significant when he was quite young. went straight into learning about management, whereas Clement has been there, seen it, got a t-shirt. It's 38 or 40 odd caps for Belgium. He played a couple of games in the World Cup finals in France, in 98. I think he was in the squad for Euro 2000. He's played with Genk, and then he's played at Club Bruges, and he's won like 2 league titles, maybe 3 Belgian cups as well, two kind of pro leagues. I don't Julia were sponsoring it back then, but 2 top titles in Belgium, and it's a league, as I say, the Belgian league, that's a couple of points above Scotland in the coefficient for associations. It's a great level. And also being at Bruges, it's a club where in Belgium you have Anderlecht and Club Bruges are the kind of 2 biggest clubs, 2 clubs that are competing all the time. Now you've got a lot more, the likes of Genk and Standard Liège, Union Saint-Gilloise these days, definitely coming in there and trying to break up that, Mechelen when I was a kid, coming in there and trying to break things up and really competing with the big clubs. But nevertheless, he knows about that, it being one of the biggest 2 clubs in the country, and the demand for success being relentless. Only first will do. So it's good. He's schooled in that. He knows what he's getting into at Rangers. Much bigger at Rangers, but he knows what he's getting into, generally speaking. So he goes into the dressing room. It's like he's played the game at a great level. He's managed at a great level. He became a manager at Beveren, I think, was a small Belgian club. He took them from like 12th to 7th or something in the top tier, and that was fantastic. He did it really quickly, improved them really quickly. This was after a couple of, 2 or 3 games and a couple of different stints as interim manager at Bruges. It's kind of alma mater. He then goes to Genk, who had won the title before. So it's a place where the pressure's on him. It's not just improve as he'll do. It's like, we've got to finish first. That's our standard. And I like that. I like that he knows about that. And I think he stabilised them for maybe half a season. He came in halfway through one season, and then he has, I think it was 2018-19 was his kind of annus mirabilis, where he has won the title. He's won the Belgian title, but at the same time, and listen to this, he went through 3 qualifying rounds of the Europa League, won his Europa League group stage, and then get put out in the post-Christmas knockout rounds by Slavia Prague. Wins his first league title as a manager, and then goes through 3 qualifying rounds, wins the group stage, and gets put out by Slavia Prague at Europa League. That's basically what Steven Gerrard did, except Steven Gerrard got knocked out a round later in 55 season. A couple of seasons later, he won 55 with us after going through 3 Europa League Europa League qualifiers, and winning the group stage, finishing first in the group stage. We went out to Slavia Prague, but in between times, we beat what team? Antwerp, the city where Philippe Clement was born. I think it's written in the stars, folks. This guy's going to succeed, isn't he? I said exactly the same stuff about Michael Beale. I have no idea if he's going to succeed or not, but his CV, it looks good to me, because he's done that with Genk, and then he's got poached by Club Bruges. He's gone in there and he's won the league again the next 2 seasons. He personally has won 3 successive Belgian titles with 2 different clubs. That's fantastic. He's able to adjust, and adjust successfully to different environments. He had a couple of goals in the Champions League with Bruges, finished 4th, won one of the groups, finished 3rd in the other one. The other season, took a couple of tankings, but we know what that's all about, and they're fairly respectable tankings. I think he's losing 4-1 to PSG, maybe 4-1 and 5-1 to Man City. The only one that's slightly concerning was the very season that we played RB Leipzig and beat them in the semi-finals of the Europa League. Bruges lost 5-0 in Leipzig. We only lost 1-0, and we were really quite unlucky to lose 1-0 in that game. That's slightly concerning, but he's done well. He then gets poached from Bruges, AS Monaco, Ligue 1, just one of the biggest, the top 5, maybe top 4, 3 richest leagues in the world, domestic leagues. PSG, Lyon, these kind of teams in there, Lille and Marseille, just a colossal, massive, really deep, rich league. And I think he took over from Niko Kovac, who had him at 6th, right at the kind of Christmas period. That's not good enough. Monaco want to be in the Champions League places all the time, so they bring in Clement. He gets them up to 3rd and into Champions League qualifiers, and the following season they're back down to 6th, but he gets the whole season, so he gets that good 18-month at Monaco. They sack him in the summer there, and that gives him, for me, that bit of saltiness that's also required. It could just mean he's a failure, and that's him spiralling out of control. He's had his chance, and that's his downhill all the way now, but I would like to think failure at Monaco isn't really that big a deal. I was really wary of people trying to recreate through Kevin Muscat and his associations, the parallels with Ange Postecoglou, guys who were born in different countries to Australia, but became Australian internationals and what have you, and end up doing well in Australian club football in the A-League, and then do well in the J-League in Japan. But it's me, actually, I was comparing it to Brendan Rodgers. I thought Brendan Rodgers' situation where he kind of failed at Liverpool ultimately, gave it a bit of a go initially, but ultimately failed at Liverpool, having come up through the ranks, through like Swansea and all that, who've got the kind of setup I would like to see Rangers having behind the scenes now, where we can just process managers without losing too much momentum. And then he fails at Liverpool, so when he goes to Celtic, he's got the experience, but he's still young enough and hungry enough to prove. This is his first spell at Celtic, obviously, because this spell at Celtic is now over for Rodgers. We're going to eviscerate him, obviously. And he was perfect the way when he arrived there. He was just absolutely what they needed at that time. I'm hoping it's the same thing with Clement. He's went to this big league. It's not quite worked out for him at the very top end. Needs to prove something. So he's got the experience. He's not too young. He's not 50 until March, so he's not too old. He's had the success that proves he knows what he's doing, but not so much success that he's lost the hunger. I think it's a great appointment. Kevin Muscat, in the minute Philippe Clement's Rangers slips up in any way, shape or form, people will be checking on their J-League apps that they've now all got in their phones and saying, well, look at Muscat, you should have got him appointed. He was the man for the job. I'm not sure that's the case, but I think Philippe Clement is really suited, and the only thing that really suited to Rangers, and really suited to Rangers at this moment in time in particular, and the only thing that really worries me is he? I think he is Flemish. I mean, Antwerp is in Flanders, I'm sure. But at first I couldn't tell if he's a Walloon or a Flitton, if he was his French-speaking part of the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium. And that's important because I think my last Francophone manager, Paul Le Guen, bit of a failure. Our last Dutch Dutch-speaking manager, Dick Advocaat, absolutely fantastic. Certainly initially anyway, doubles and trebles and doing pretty well in Europe. If you don't think that's a big thing, well, look at our last two managers that were fluent in Portuguese. Two of them are rubbish. Pedro Caixinha and Michael Beale. And PC, we've got Philippe Clement, Pedro Caixinha. If you don't think there's anything in the initials, well, you'll get Walter Smith and William Struth, the two most successful Rangers managers of all time. You've William Wilton and Willie Waddle, WW, both kind of surrounded in tragedy their managerial careers, but really major figures, not traditional managers, not managers in the sense we'd understand it now, much more than that, kind of secretaries, general manager, whatever, and doing much more to kind of shape the club and shape the character of the club and maintain the greatness of the club than a lot of people will ever give them credit for. So I think, I'm a bit worried with the old PC thing. Pedro Caixinha, not a guy we ever want to know about again, even though he's doing quite well in Brazil now, according to Dougie from Gersnet. But I'm really excited about Philippe Clement, and that means nothing. We've just got to see the guy. There'll be more press conferences this week. We'll get his actual getting it to the mainstream media and the fan media. He'll be appearing in front of them, I would imagine, tomorrow, and the questions about his backroom staff will start getting asked. Talk about Thomas Buffel, because I think it's the first person anybody could think of who was both Belgian and had played for Rangers and was of an age to be in somebody's backroom staff. Will Steve Davis be kept on in some sort of management role to help Clement settle in? We want Steve Davis back as a player. I would say he's definitely worth another go, I think, as a player. And James Tavernier, a lot of fans, if Philippe Clement wants to do a really cheap and easy way to get himself on side with a more vocal element of our support, then just take the armband off James Tavernier. I think that'd be disgraceful and a terrible decision, and it would alienate a lot of the players straight away. But something that's definitely going to be asked of him. There's going to be asked about that. And it'll be interesting to see a lot of the reaction today on Twitter. It's not been unanimously enthusiastic. Obviously, it never is when it comes to Rangers. A lot of people demanding that he's got to get the proper budget. And come January, he's got to be given money to spend, because these duds that Michael Beale has lumped us with need to be got rid of. And other people saying you better not give him any money, because Michael Beale spent so much money that he can't afford to get anybody else. So he better just have to work with what he's got. So we'll see how that's going to pan out as well. But the main thing for me right now is that after 2 weeks, and it only took 2 weeks, I think that's worked out quite well. We have a new manager in place to make his debut against Hibs at Ibrox. This is Michael Beale's competitive debut was against Hibs at Ibrox, and if we can do them every bit as easily as the ladies' team did Hibs at home today, we will be absolutely cruising, and Philippe Clement will be off to a cracking start. I think his style of play, I think he intimated himself in that brief snippet of an interview I saw with Rangers TV, is that he's going to just adjust to whatever needs doing. He's going to just take it game by game. And the suspicion, a lot of people see as detrimental, is that he's going to kind of alter the team to suit the opposition. Whereas I think we're again influenced by the Postecoglou thing, but we're looking for a team that's just going to go out there and play its own game against anybody. But there's only 2 or 3 minutes ago, it feels to me that we were shouting at various managers that there was no plan B. So sometimes we want fluidity, sometimes we don't. Clement mentioned in his interview he will provide fluidity ultimately once players are able to change position easily. But that it might be a bit too soon for that. But he wants goals. He wants to attack. He wants to get lots of goals. I think he knows the score. I think he knows what's required of him at Rangers. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he's going to do. Anything else to cover? Oh yeah, the League Cup. You better get that thing flipping well won. Get that thing won. The League Cup has become, it should be seen as it's a low-hanging fruit. You just go in there, you win a couple of games, Celtic aren't even in the competition, that's you got a trophy under your belt and you're good to go. I feel like we have become so traumatised by that trophy. When I was booking my ticket the other day for the semi-final with Hearts, I'm just thinking, oh God, Sunday at Hampden with Rangers, it's not been a good thing over the past few years. So it could just as easily be an opportunity for Philippe Clement to horrify everybody really early in the season. It could be beginning of next month if we get beat off Aberdeen in the semi-final. It's going to be an absolute, Hearts in the semi-final, it's going to be an absolute disaster. Or if Hibs or Aberdeen beat us in the final in December, it'll be an absolute disaster. It's become, I'm more obsessed with the League Cup now than I was with 55. Now, I wanted 55 more, obviously, we all did. That was the number one concern, the number one ambition when we were coming back up through the lower leagues even. But the League Cup, a failure to win 28 in the League Cups has really started to obsess me. I really want that trophy to be won. So that would be, it's still got to be seen as a major opportunity, but he needs to get that one and get himself off to the best possible start as Rangers manager. Listen, folks, thanks for listening to me rabbiting on. Just need to get it out of the system. International break, we got a lot of folk on holiday, schools on holiday and that just now, and the whole Gersnet team, all these guys doing it for free, doing it in their spare time. So we're taking a wee break just now, but we will have somebody, but the latest, we're going to have a pod on Friday night, a preview pod of that Hibs game, which no doubt we'll spend most of that pod reviewing the previous week's pressers and any signs, any hints we've got of what Philippe Clement intends to do with this team. The main thing is he just wins, because that's what it's all about at Rangers. Thanks very much for listening to me, folks, and welcome to the club, Philippe Clement.